This links to a tweet which has a video by the Future of Life Institute all about the possibility of nuclear holocaust. I've never wanted to swear more on air chat, but seriously, screw these people. Like, they've all got a grift like this. This is Max Tegmark's institute, by the way, the Future of Life Institute. They all have wonderful sounding names, the Future of Life Institute. All they do is produce material about the ways in which they think everything can go wrong without ever considering the solutions, and they get it completely wrong. In this particular case, Max Tegmark, the physicist, and all of his luminary intelligentsia minions that work for him have come up with a simulation of what if the US released all their nuclear weapons, and what if Russia released all their nuclear weapons, what would happen to the world? And what does Tegmark himself say about this simulation? When all of them go off everywhere around the world, what does he say? He calls it the, quote, most scientifically complete, unquote, simulation to date of this. The most scientifically complete. What an absolute joke. It ignores everything. It ignores everything about reality. Number one, it ignores the vastly superior military technology of the US, which would, in all likelihood, if this sort of thing kicked off, if Russia was to launch one ICBM, the United States would pick it up almost immediately, shoot it out of the sky, and then it would proceed to shoot all the others out of the sky, and it would it would obliterate, it would annihilate all of the nuclear silos in Russia very, very quickly. I doubt anything would reach the United States. Maybe one, if they're lucky, would get through the net. This is not a scientifically complete picture of what would happen. As I was saying on Twitter, Russia has basically the economic strength of Australia, and then they've got Soviet-era nukes. Are they dangerous? Absolutely they are. The interesting thing I learned about only recently was that because of recent European research into fusion power, they've actually developed systems, and the US military no doubt has these, where they can track fission radiation, which is what you need to have a fusion bomb, by the way. They can track it in real time. They can spot this stuff, uranium and plutonium, traveling around the world very easily, because you can't shield the radiation coming out of this stuff very easily, right? In a nuclear weapon. It's not like people are worried about getting on a boat and getting into New York Harbor and then blowing up the city. That won't happen. Sorry, here's the Tegmark tweet. That last one was a link to a response to the Tegmark tweet, which I thought was hilarious because it was comparing it to that 1983 film, which I found thrilling at the time. I would have been, 7 years old or something, called War Games, all about this exact kind of thing. Comparing what Tegmark has done to what's going on in that 1983 film. I thought that's about right. The level of computation being used in this so-called simulation is about as good as the level of computation used to make the CGI for that 1983 film. So here's the Tegmark one. These people frustrate me because the entire grift, their entire business model, is just to continue to tell the world, especially governments, about how we're on the brink of extinction. We're always getting closer to extinction. The better things get, the worse they're about to get. It's apparently their entire argument. And they just get so much authority, power, and money by doing this, by scaring the bejesus out of people. It's bad enough that it's politicians, but kids hear this as well. Kids. I remember growing up during the 80s and feeling the fear because the silly teachers were telling us, the nuclear weapons are going to go off. And maybe there was a sense in which there's a possibility of this, but you don't need to hear that as a kid. It's the same as today. They don't need to hear about climate change. It's all nonsense that we're not going to be able to solve these problems. Yeah, they're problems, but they're not going to wipe out humanity. But they've all got this grift and they're all listened to. Like the monk on the proverbial hill, people are sitting around them cross-legged and going, give us your wisdom, master. Tell us, Max Tegmark, what's going to happen. He doesn't know. He's making stuff up. He's writing science fiction and putting it out there as science fact. The most complete scientific analysis of this. Get a life. Martin Rees, who's sort of a colleague of David Deutsch, but completely on the other side of just about every issue. He's on the other side when it comes to epistemology and how science works. He's on the other side when it comes to what people are and what we can understand. He's on the other side compared to optimism. I mean, he's the anti-David Deutsch to a large extent because, he's an Oxford-Cambridge kind of a guy, a similar kind of a voice, sort of a similar level of respect in the community, more so, I would say. But he himself co-founded the Centre for the Study of Existential Risk. He also serves on the board of the Future of Life Institute. So, he's got a grift out there telling people about existential risk. And of course, he wrote the book on this stuff, all the ways in which people are going to destroy the world. And he calculated a precise probability, I don't know, something like 90% chance that we're going to wipe ourselves out within the next 100 years. Prepare to be disappointed with his mathematical analysis, by the way. He doesn't know. He doesn't have a clue. He can't predict the growth of knowledge. And he and David have had discussions or debates about this. Well worth looking up to see David just wipe the floor with him. Of course, Rees doesn't realise that he's been refuted at every turn, but there you go. And of course, my favourite on all of this, Nick Bostrom, who has the Future of Humanity Institute at Oxford University, another grifter who's going to tell you 1,000 ways in which we're going to wipe ourselves out. So government should listen to him and, people should pay him consultancy fees in order to learn about the problems. Of course, he just lacks the imagination to think of the solutions that we're going to come up with, which we inevitably do. And why? Well, because That's what we do. We're problem solvers. We're knowledge creators. We find the solution. We figure stuff out. Just like Tegmark can't imagine. Didn't even think to include in his simulation missile defense systems. Didn't think that solution already exists. Just pretends. Then calls it science. It frustrates me because they're scaring people. They're lying to people. And somehow this is a way to make money. And of course, we can't, let's mention a fourth person with yet a fourth institute to do with all of this. The great Will MacAskill of effective altruism fame, one of Sam Bankman-Fried's colleagues and advisors and so on and so forth. He's got his own one as well. He's got his own. I've got to look this up. What was his one? Yes, the friendly sounding Global Priorities Institute, also at the University of Oxford. Prepare to hear that the Global Priorities Institute, with all the pessimists are on the board, A.C. Grayling, look him up on Twitter if you've never wanted to hear a more pessimistic philosopher in your life. A.C. Grayling, he's one. Anyway, all the big names are part of his Global Priorities Institute. And what are the global priorities? Well, of course, they're all the standard stuff. Artificial intelligence is going to wipe out the planet. Climate change is going to wipe out the planet. The virus is going to wipe out the planet. Too many people, overpopulation is going to wipe out the planet. Of course, capitalism is going to wipe out the planet. So we need regulations and we need global government and global communism to do this. These people have great influence. They can't win elections, so they're going to start institutes at various universities and use their authority as professors and as people who write books about morality to persuade, these days mainly podcasters, to have them on and interview them and then eventually get onto mainstream media and persuade the governments of the world to enact their policies, because the average person is not going to understand what they're saying because it's so far-fetched. Because it is far-fetched. It's all a disaster movie. They're saying nothing more intelligible than what James Cameron does with Terminator. So I thought I'll bookend this series of tweets with those two things. Number one, Max Tegmark coming up with a scientifically complete, so he calls it, simulation of nuclear holocaust, where he's completely ignored any defense systems. So the most unscientific, incomplete simulation would be better. So we'll start with that, and we'll end with Will MacAskill, who is very, very, very closely associated with Sam Bankman-Fried. Okay, so we can't be judged by the company we keep, perhaps, but this was the guy that was very deeply involved in the FTX Future Fund, and they started effective altruism, and yet people are still listening to this guy. He's one of Sam Harris's great heroes. So from beginning to end, as soon as you start to hear about these institutes that are about global existential risk and so on and so forth, and they're going to simulate whether it's climate change through to prophesying when the AI is going to take over through to nuclear holocaust, you throw it all in the same bin. It's all absolute nonsense. Is climate change a problem? Yes, it is. Is the fear of the use of nuclear weapons by governments around the world a risk and a problem? Yes, absolutely. Could AI be put to terrible uses? Yes. We are beset with problems. Problems are inevitable, but they're also soluble. And the history of humanity is striving to make the world a better place. Things can go wrong. We all know that. But just because you and your colleagues cannot imagine the solution to come doesn't mean that what follows from that is the death of humanity. Should we talk about the possibility that everything might get wiped out? I suppose so. But could we at least have similar airtime for the possibility that things are going to get spectacularly better? Because that's the history. This isn't an inductive argument. This just relies upon understanding what a person is. A person's a problem solver, and we've got, coming up to 8 billion of them, solving their problems, wanting their life to be better and the lives of their fellow family members and community members to be better, and everyone to be better. People are nice to each other. Yeah, there are some sociopaths out there. Yeah, there are some bad eggs. But overall, we're striving to make the world better, and that's the explanation for why things have improved. Stop being so pessimistic. Stop scaring people. Stop being so extreme. Have some fun.